When I was a child, my father would buy me a new Lego set, and he insisted that I followed the instructions very carefully. Every brick, every color, just like the picture on the box. I did it meticulously. And when I finished, I felt exceptionally proud, certain, almost safe. And I remember the first time that I ever did that, he said to me, "Bravo, now pull it apart. This time, build it with whatever you can imagine." I remember standing there, and initially I was stunned. I thought I'd done something wrong. I thought I'd failed. I'd followed the instructions perfectly. Yet still, for my father, in my eyes, it wasn't enough. What I came to learn later on was that he wasn't dismantling my work. He was dismantling my fear. He was teaching me that possibility has no ceiling, that obedience builds replicas, but imagination builds worlds. And that is the lesson we're in danger of forgetting. Now, my mother, on the other hand, she had a very different philosophy, ever the pragmatist. When I was a teenager, she would look at me and say, "Adriano, you need a real job, like an accountant, like a lawyer, like a doctor," the classic migrant story. And she usually said it while I was kind of hunched over my sketchbook, where I was dreaming about worlds and buildings and spaces that yet to exist. We were raised to believe that there are two kind of categories of work, a white collar or a blue collar. But no one told me or told us about an emerging future, the no-collar future, a future where imagination is your workwear, where creativity becomes your courage, and where being deeply human is no longer an option, it's in our inherent advantage. And here is what makes this moment different to all other times. Artificial intelligence can now write essays. It can compose music. It can generate images. It can draft legal advice. It can even design buildings. Machines are learning to imitate us on a scale unprecedented. But as they learn to imitate us, we have an opportunity where we must learn to become more fully human. Information is abundant, but imagination is not. Artificial intelligence can optimize patterns. It can predict. It can generate, but it doesn't hold purpose. It doesn't hold our values, and it doesn't take responsibility for consequences. That remains the human work. And the future will not belong to those who retrieve information the fastest. It will belong to those who imagine what does not come next and what hasn't existed yet. So I just want to pause for a moment and let's be rigorous about this. In Australia, the creative economy contributes over $120 billion to our GDP annually. More than 900,000 Australians work in creative roles across all industries. Globally, the World Economic Forum has identified creativity as the fastest rising cognitive skill required for the future of work. What that suggests to me is that creativity brings value. It drives social and economic prosperity, and it sits at the heart of differentiation, innovation, and ethical design. Creativity is not decorative, it's infrastructure. But there is something slightly absurd about an education system that looks a young person in the eyes, whose whole body is buzzing with curiosity and says, "Great, let's put you in a box with clear instructions and a predictable outcome." It's like telling a jazz musician the safest future for them is in elevator music. And yet, our education system still treats it like a dessert. You can have creativity after literacy, after numeracy, and God forbid, after the standardized test. So Ken Robinson once asked whether schools kill creativity. Nearly 20 years later, we're still circling that same question. Literacy teaches us to read the world as it is. Creativity teaches us to imagine the world as it could be. And when we privilege one over the other and we marginalize the other, all we do is we produce compliance over courage. We have built an education system that rewards compliance, and then we act deeply surprised when courage is scarce. We keep handing young people the box and telling them not to touch the pieces. I've seen what happens when someone actually is invited to do that. A few years ago, at the end of a school year, I received a message from a Year 12 student. His name was Joseph. Joseph was bright, highly capable, and really talented in the area of design. But he carried a quiet ceiling over his head, not necessarily imposed by the system, but one imposed by himself. And at the end of the school year, he wrote me a letter. And an extract of that letter was, "Sir, if it wasn't for your commitment this year, there'd be no way I'd be able to break my ceiling. Break my ceiling." He didn't thank me for giving him the answers. He thanked me for refusing to lower the bar. Not for confusing comfort with capability. And in that moment, I realized something very significant as an educator. I didn't teach a subject. I teach agency. I teach young people that they are not bound by the first version of themselves. Because creativity is not talent reserved for the gifted. It is agency. It is the capacity to author your own participation in this world. We are entering a no-collar world, an economy increasingly self-authored. The question is not whether the future will be built. The question is who will author it. The most valuable professions will be those who can imagine what no algorithm has yet seen, who can connect disciplines that rarely speak to one another, who can design solutions that are not only efficient, but highly ethical, and who can sit inside complexity without collapsing into fear. The defining questions of our century are not merely technical, they are imaginative. Can we build it? Yes. Should we build it? And how do we design it so humans can flourish? That is a creative question. And creativity has always been a civilization force. Human beings have always imagined cities, stories, institutions, and futures into existence. The tools have changed, I grant that, but the impulse does not. Possibility has no ceiling. My father knew it, Joseph discovered it, and so must we. So I want to be clear here. For Australia, or for any nation serious about its future, creativity must be treated with the same primacy as literacy and numeracy. Not after, not if there's a bit of time, not something tucked away at the end of a corridor, but with the same weight. Because if we are to cultivate imagination deliberately, we can't rely on outsourcing it any longer. Not to algorithms, not to corporations, not to systems that optimize efficiency over our inherent human dignity. If we do not teach young people to redesign the box, they will inherit a world designed entirely by someone else. My parents wanted security for their children, and they weren't wrong. But security in the 20th century meant stability. Security in the 21st century means courage, the willingness to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn, the willingness to pull something apart. And I think back to that Lego set, to the moment when I stood there, initially crushed, believing that I had failed. I'd followed the instructions perfectly, but, perfection was never the point. It never is. Possibility was. The box was never the destination. It was my starting place. You are not here merely to replicate what has already been built. You are here to pull it apart. You are here to ask better questions, to imagine braver answers, and to design a future that does not yet exist. Because the future will not arrive fully formed, it will be authored by those bold enough to take the pieces apart. Just like a father once asked a young boy to do. That's the audacity of our human imagination. Thank you.